Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at the Grand Prix rune deck. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, if you have seen it, we are playing the Earthright, the Earthright deck that was on the list. There was also a Daria deck and a Mysteria Burn deck. Unfortunately, I don't have all the cards needed for the Mysteria Burn deck, and the Daria deck I basically had been playing on Grand Prix anyway. It's nearly identical to what I was using, or at least similar enough that I didn't feel the need to recover that deck again after doing my previous videos. So if you want to check out a Daria deck, you can check out my previous videos. I qualified for Group A with it and it did pretty well overall, so do check those out. But we are looking at the Earth rune deck, so it's a pretty stock standard Earth rune. Nothing really jumps out at me as being a kind of special card. I mean, Dance of Death, pretty popular removal, great burn. There's not much else in the deck that most of you probably haven't seen. I mean, if you are a newer player, you might not have seen much of Time Worn Mage Levi, but for older players, he's like one of the most common cards, or as he would put it, as old as dirt. I mean,
just like back in the old days.
He's great, so plenty of cards here, lots of good options. Wizard of Oz, I can't actually get to use in the video, but still pretty decent card. I couldn't fault that in an Earth rune deck just because of how Earth functions, so we'll get right into it and check it out. So our first matchup is against Shadow. As I have mentioned in other videos, Shadow is just one of those decks. I mean, the reanimate package for it now is absolutely crazy, which means Atomy just can run rampant in Unlimited, and it typically does. Of course, it's probably not the most overpowered deck, but it definitely is one of the highest rolling decks. So with a decent hand, you can decimate your opponent. With an average hand, you can still decimate your opponent. It's only when they miss their high roll that you can really take advantage of your cards to beat theirs. Silent Laboratory, a great way to kick this game off. Being able to get a follower and an Earth Sigil in an Earthright deck gives you lots of value, especially if you can get something like Golem. When you're using other cards, Silent Laboratory plus Golem can be quite good, but a zombie still isn't bad either. So I don't worry too much. I think I worry more about going face, because being an Earthright deck, they tend to want to go face as much as possible, mostly burn rune. That's basically what Earth rune decks are these days. Nearly any variety is some form of burn. So being able to just kill that and knowing that my 2-1 was going to survive pretty much regardless due to the fact that I had Earth Sigils really wasn't too big a concern to me. We do get the Starseer's Telescope, which is great. It means double draw plus play point regaining, so I like that. But we are going to lose that for the Mage of Nightfall, which means the 2-1 now won't be able to survive very easily. Although I do remember back when that thing was a 2-2, and geez, wasn't that thing a nightmare to deal with back then? I mean, the amount of times that thing could be resummoned, plus the value it could give you, was absolutely crazy. It's much fairer now, I think. So, Ceres is a pretty hard card to deal with normally, but because I have Dance of Death and Mutagenic Bolt, removing it is fairly easy, and we get to negate their healing. With a quick Evo, we do set them to 10, which is great for us. That's exactly where we want them. Right in our grasp. I do wish I had the the Cerberus leader. I'm glad I got the Daria leader. That did happen during Grand Prix. You can check my Twitter if you want to see an image of that, because that's where I posted a little while ago.
This was foreseen.
So, not doing too bad so far. Use the Master Mage to go purely face, and not too worried about using my Evo for it. I was hoping they'd go for a Board Flood, unfortunately. Don't really go for much else. Using Altered Fate really confused me. I wasn't sure what this deck was initially. I thought it was going to be an Atomy Shadow, but it turns out to just be something weird. I mean, it's possible that this is actually a Hinterland Ghoul PTP Shadow. Very, very possible. I'm pretty sure that was one of the decks that were up on Grand Prix, so wouldn't surprise me if that was it. Unfortunately, another deck I didn't have the cards for. Otherwise, I would have loved to have covered that deck. So we can get 3 damage out of this and remove that Ceres, which is great. I can also try and set up my Earth Sigils a little bit and try and get some value out of those. Probably should have went with Carl though over the Silent Laboratory. If I had went with Carl, I could have at least healed 2 points. I feel like that might have been a better way to go. Although I did want to have the draw a card Earth Sigil out first, so I mean, it could have been worse. So, Mutagenic Bolt is going to be our friend in this matchup. I was hoping to use it on a much bigger board, but when we're this close to already having lethal, leaving it like that is fine. I suspect they will play another follower next turn, which I can then target with Dance of Death, and having no way to remove this rats effectively this turn made it very, very decent for me. So they're really pushing those shadows now. It's nice to see this at least. You don't get to see a Hinterland Ghoul deck very often like this. So, as predicted though, they did play a follow-up, which does give us lethal perfectly with these rats. I mean, worked out in our favour quite well. Having a high health total definitely helped, and I'm glad we did. So, we'll get right into the next match right about now. So, our next matchup is against Sword. So, this matchup, I believe, was one that was fairly interesting. Also, I just realized I queued the wrong deck, so I do apologize. We will just be back in a sec. So, you kind of get a little sneak preview of what's for tomorrow. We do have Shadow coming up tomorrow, so unfortunately, this is a different matchup. I actually ended up with 2 Shadow decks in a row to fight, which I actually didn't initially realize. Pretty sure this one, though, is the Adamy variant, the previous one obviously being the Hinterland Ghoul. And yeah, so I do apologize I showed off the other deck previously, but we will be looking at that Shadow deck tomorrow. It's just because I'm doing these videos in succession and the wins that I had for these replays happen to be right next to each other, so it's not too surprising that sometimes that happens. But it's nice for you guys, you get a little sneak preview at what's going down tomorrow, so you can expect the first match of the next video to be Shadow versus Sword, which is cool. So really nice playset here though. We get our Earth Sigils out quite comfortably and at the same time set up a nice ward. We also got a draw, which worked out, so being able to get as much value as we can from these is always a priority. And we can easily go for the Mage of Nightfall, plus our 2-1 is still protected fairly well. So really just aiming to get as much damage as we can. Scullering, really going wide with this, especially with Lord Adamy, no surprise there. They got a basically perfect curve Adamy, plus a 2-1, which you couldn't ask for much better, honestly. So all I could really do was play the 2-3, at least put something on board, get myself the Earth Sigil out so that the 2-1 can survive regardless, and then go face for 6 damage. I'm not too worried about what I lose here, but they do a pretty good job at removing all my cards, or as many as they can. So the Adamy gets to sit very, very comfortably there as an 8-8 without really any issue for it. They do decide to throw it to face though and leave up my 4-3, which at first I thought was a surprise, but thinking back on it, I think that was the only play they probably had that was half decent without having to risk losing their biggest drop, their Adamy. Of course, you would think if they're running Adamy, they are also running the Reanimate package, so it was slightly out of the blue they didn't decide to remove that instantly, because doing so left them open to a massive amount of damage. We have 5 with Piercing Rune and Crimson Sorcery, and I don't see Adamy dying very easily, so we only really need to stick 1 follower. If we can stick any of these followers here, we can go for lethal. And even if we don't, the only way they would win is by going face. If they don't go face, then we just play Master Mage and we do quite well.
Good night. I'm coming.
So they decided to go face, really pushing as much as they could. But unfortunately that does leave them open to lethal with Piercing Rune, Crimson Sorcery and our 2-3 on board, which of course with the Evo is more than enough to win this. Or more so just enough to win this, but either way I'm quite happy with how lucky we got that they didn't kill it, but at the same time if they had have left it up, really didn't have many choices available to them. So hope you guys did enjoy this video. I mean, Earth Rune, Burn Rune, however you want to call it. I always enjoyed playing this deck a lot. I thought it was a fun one, especially when it was first popping up back in the day. It was a while ago now, but it's definitely a deck that's always caught my interest a little bit. Is it the funnest deck ever? No, certainly not. Is it good basically in every single meta that it's existed? Definitely. It's always had its place ever since it was basically first founded, which, I mean, once they introduced a lot of the Earth Sigil combo cards and things like that, it really worked out. So I'd love to see it expanded on in the future, but for now it's stayed pretty rock solid and has done a really good job as a deck. So if you did enjoy it, deck list will be in the description below. You can hit that like button and subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.